At Christmas dinner, my dad said, "You're a burden. You can't live with us anymore." When I packed up and told them I'd stop paying the bills, my dad, at first, I thought I misheard. My mom gave this nervous laugh like maybe he was joking, but he just sat there staring at me, waiting for my reaction. The room went silent. My sister Hannah froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at me with wide eyes like she couldn't believe what she just heard. I swallowed the piece of ham I was chewing and put my fork down. "What? You heard me," he said. "You're no longer welcome here. You need to move out." I just sat there trying to process. I'm 23, have a steady job, could have moved out years ago, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the electric bill, the internet, groceries most weeks, things they couldn't afford because my dad had been unemployed for years and my mom only worked part-time. I wasn't a burden. I was the reason the lights were still on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, I was being kicked out like some useless freeloader. Mom finally spoke up. "Maybe we should talk about this later." But Dad interrupted. "No, this is my house. I make the rules and I say he's done here." Hannah put down her fork. She was only 16, and I could tell she was scared. She stared at our parents like she didn't even recognize them. If they could throw me out so easily, what did that mean for her? I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to argue or beg. If they wanted me out, fine. But they weren't ready for what that really meant. I leaned back in my chair. "All right," I said. My dad sat up straighter like he'd won some imaginary battle. My mom still looked uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything. Maybe she was in shock, or maybe she just didn't care as much as I thought. I stood up, grabbed my plate, and carried it to the sink. I didn't want to give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, I looked at Hannah, who was still sitting there, tense and confused. I gave her a small nod. She was the only one at that table I still cared about. Dad took a sip of his drink like nothing had happened. Mom went back to picking at her mashed potatoes. Hannah kept looking at me like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. I didn't stay to finish dinner, just walked out. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and started packing. I wasn't going to waste time trying to understand why they were doing this. If they wanted me gone, I was gone. But that also meant they'd lose everything I'd been paying for, and I wasn't going to warn them. I packed in silence, but I could hear them talking downstairs. My mom's voice was low and scared. My dad's was firm, like he was trying to convince her of something. I caught bits and pieces. "He's old enough. We can handle it. He should have moved out years ago." An hour later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and Hannah slipped inside, quickly shutting the door behind her. Her eyes were red and puffy. She'd been crying. "Are you really leaving?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "I don't have much choice. Can I come with you?" That broke my heart. "You're 16. They'd call the cops, but the second you turn 18, my door's open." She hugged me tight. "I hate them for this." "Don't," I said. "Just remember who was here for you." I left that night. Didn't say goodbye to them. Just grabbed my stuff and drove to a friend's place. 3 days later, my phone exploded. "Mom, the power company is threatening to shut us off. Can you call them?" "Dad, you need to pay your share of the bills." I stared at the messages for a long time. Then I texted back. "I don't live there anymore, remember?" And I blocked them both. 2 weeks later, Hannah called from a friend's phone. Her voice was shaky. "The internet's gone. The power was off for 2 days until Mom borrowed money from Grandma. They can't afford groceries. Dad's fighting with Mom, constantly blaming her for everything." "I'm sorry you have to deal with this," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, "I found papers in Dad's room. Legal documents with your name on them." "What kind of documents?" "Something about Grandpa's inheritance. The one he left you before he died. My grandfather had passed 2 years ago. I knew he'd left me something, but Dad said it was tied up in legal issues and I'd get it eventually. I'd trusted him to handle it." "Hannah, what did the papers say?" Her voice cracked. "Dad forged your signature. He transferred everything into his name 6 months ago, over $80,000. That's why he kicked you out now, so you wouldn't find out." The room started spinning. My own father had stolen from me, then thrown me out to cover his tracks. I took pictures of everything, but he just came into my room and I heard a crash, Hannah screaming, and then my dad's voice yelling something I couldn't make out. The line went dead. I tried calling back immediately. Nothing. Tried 3 more times, straight to voicemail. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the house, doing 85 inches of 55 zone. Didn't care if I got pulled over. When I got there 40 minutes later, all the lights were off except Hannah's bedroom window. I pounded on the front door. No answer. I went around back and tried that door. Locked. I could hear yelling inside but couldn't make out the words. I used the key I still had. Yeah, I never gave it back. The house was dark except for the glow from upstairs. I took the stairs 2 at a time and found Hannah's door closed. I could hear my dad on the other side, voice raised. "You had no right to go through my things. No right. You stole from him?" Hannah was crying. "You're a thief. That money was mine. Your grandfather promised it to me, not him." I just corrected a mistake. I opened the door without knocking. Hannah was backed into the corner of her room, phone smashed on the floor. My dad stood in the middle, face red, still in his stained work shirt he'd probably been wearing for 3 days. He turned when he heard me. For a second, something like fear crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by anger. Get out of my house. Not without Hannah. I kept my voice level. She's my daughter. You have no say here. And that was my inheritance, the one you stole. Mom appeared in the doorway behind me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Please, both of you, can we just talk about this calmly? There's nothing to talk about, I said, eyes still on my dad. Hannah, get your things. You're coming with me. She's not going anywhere. Dad stepped between us. I'm calling the police then, right now, and I'm showing them the evidence of fraud Hannah photographed. That stopped him. His jaw worked like he was chewing something tough. You wouldn't. Try me. Hannah moved fast. She grabbed a backpack from her closet and started shoving clothes into it. Mom made a weak sound of protest but didn't move to stop her. This is kidnapping, Dad said. No, this is me keeping my sister safe from someone who destroys phones and corners teenage girls in their rooms. That's called menacing, by the way. I looked it up on the drive over. I hadn't, but he didn't know that. Hannah zipped her bag and moved to my side. She was trembling. Hannah, honey, please, Mom finally spoke. We can work this out. Your father just got upset. He didn't mean, he smashed my phone because I found proof he's a criminal. Hannah's voice was stronger now. I'm done. We left. Dad didn't try to stop us, just stood there breathing hard. Mom followed us down the stairs, pleading, but not actually saying anything that mattered. Just variations of please and we're family. In my car, Hannah started crying for real. Big, shaking sobs. I drove to a 24-hour diner and parked. Let her cry it out while I sat there trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. I'm sorry, she finally said. I shouldn't have looked through his stuff, but I was trying to find the checkbook because Mom asked me to, and I saw your name, and you have nothing to apologize for. He's the one who should be sorry. Do you really think he forged your signature? Yeah, I do. Grandpa specifically told me that money was for my future, for a house or business or whatever I needed. Dad always resented that. We sat in that parking lot until 2 a.m., talking through everything. I showed her my bank account on my phone. The $11,000 I'd saved up working overtime and living like a broke college student even though I had a decent job at a medical supply warehouse. That's enough for both of us? She asked. For a little while. I'll figure it out. That night we stayed at my friend's place. He and his girlfriend let Hannah take their couch while I crashed on the floor. The next morning, I called a lawyer, a guy named Jeffrey Ross who handled estates and fraud cases. His secretary said he could see me that afternoon. I brought the photos Hannah had taken, printed them out at a FedEx. Jeffrey was maybe 50, gray at the temples, office that smelled like old books and coffee. He looked at the documents for a long time. This is pretty clear forgery, he said finally. Your signature here and here, they're not even close to matching. Did your father have access to anything with your real signature? Old tax returns, maybe? I lived there until a few weeks ago. That would do it. People think forging a signature is hard, but if you have samples and a steady hand, it's easier than you'd think. He set the papers down. Here's the situation. You can file a police report for fraud and identity theft. With this evidence, they'll likely investigate. But that means your father will be arrested and prosecuted. Good. I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This will destroy whatever relationship remains with your parents. Your mother will likely have to testify. This becomes public record. Your family's financial situation gets examined. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Christmas dinner, about living in that house for 23 years, paying their bills, being treated like I was worthless, about Hannah's smashed phone on her bedroom floor. Yeah, I'm prepared. Jeffrey nodded. Then let's do this right. I'll also file a civil suit to recover the funds. The criminal case will take time, but the civil one, we can move faster on that, especially with evidence this clear. I signed the paperwork, paid his retainer fee, $2,500 that made my stomach hurt, left his office feeling like I'd just stepped off a cliff. The police report was filed the next day. A detective named Morris took my statement, looked at the photos, asked a bunch of questions about my relationship with my father, whether there was a history of abuse. I told him the truth. Emotional and verbal, yeah. Physical, no. We'll be in touch, Morris said. This kind of case, financial fraud between family members, it takes time to build, but you've got good documentation. That helps. 2 days later, my dad was arrested at the house. Hannah heard about it from one of her friends whose mom was the neighborhood gossip. He made bail within 6 hours. Posted by my mom using money borrowed from her sister. My phone started blowing up again, this time from extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew, all with the same basic message. How could you do this to your father? Family doesn't call the cops on family. You're tearing everyone apart over money. I blocked them all. The only one I responded to was my Uncle Raymond, my mom's older brother. He'd always been decent to me. His message was different. Your mom called crying. She says you had your dad arrested. I told her if he stole from you, he deserves whatever happens. But she's asking if we can talk. Just you and me. No pressure. We met at a coffee shop. Raymond was a big guy, ex-military, ran his own plumbing business. He ordered black coffee and got straight to it. Did he really forge documents? I showed him the photos on my phone. He looked at them for a long time. Son of a bitch, he muttered. I knew he was having money problems, but I didn't think he'd go this far. He kicked me out so I wouldn't find out. Raymond rubbed his face. Your mom's a mess. She's saying she didn't know anything about it. Do you believe her? He was quiet. Honestly, I don't know. She's my sister, but she's got this way of not seeing what she doesn't want to see. It's possible he kept her in the dark. It's also possible she knew and convinced herself it was okay somehow. Hannah's staying with me now. Yeah, I heard. CPS been called yet? That hit me like cold water. What? Your parents still have custody of a minor. You took her without permission. I'm surprised they haven't reported it already. She left willingly. He destroyed her phone and cornered her in her room. I believe you, but legally it's complicated. You might want to talk to your lawyer about that too. I called Jeffrey from the parking lot. He confirmed what Raymond said. Technically, what I done could be considered custodial interference, even though Hannah was 16 and came willingly. Best case scenario, your parents don't push it because they don't want more attention on their situation, Jeffrey said. Worst case, they report you and this gets messier. You might want to look into emergency custody or have Hannah file for emancipation. That weekend, I took Hannah to a family law attorney Jeffrey recommended. Her name was Victoria Chen. She explained that emancipation was possible but required proof Hannah could support herself financially. At 16, that was basically impossible. The other option is filing for guardianship, Victoria said. But your parents would have to consent or be proven unfit, given that there's already a criminal case involving your father and an incident of destroyed property and intimidation involving Hannah. We might have grounds. How long does that take? Months, typically. In the meantime, I'd document everything. Keep Hannah in school, make sure her basic needs are met, maintain a stable home environment. If CPS does get involved, you want to show you're the better option. We left her office with more paperwork and another retainer fee. My savings were getting demolished, but I didn't see another choice. Monday morning, I got a call from Hannah's school. She'd been marked absent for 3 days, and they needed to know why. She's been dealing with a family emergency, I said. She'll be back tomorrow. And who am I speaking with? Her brother. She's staying with me temporarily. I see. We'll need documentation of guardianship to update our records and excuse the absences. Working on it. That night, Hannah admitted she was scared to go back to school. Half her friends' parents knew her parents. Small town, everybody talks. She didn't want to deal with questions or judgment. You can't hide forever, I told her. And you need to graduate. That's not optional. She went back Tuesday. Came home that afternoon looking exhausted. Everyone knows, she said. Dad was arrested. You filed charges. I'm living with you. The guidance counselor pulled me aside and asked if I was safe and if I needed to talk to someone. What did you tell her? That I'm safer now than I was. The criminal case moved slowly. Detective Morris kept me updated. They'd seized financial records from my dad's house, found other irregularities. Apparently, my inheritance wasn't the only questionable thing he'd done. There were credit cards in my name I never opened. Small amounts, but enough to establish a pattern. He's been using your identity for about 3 years, Morris told me. Nothing huge. A card here, a loan there, but it adds up. We're building a stronger case than we initially thought. My dad hired a public defender, couldn't afford a private attorney. The irony wasn't lost on me. That $80,000 he stole was already gone. Spent on what? I never found out. Probably paying off debts he'd racked up living beyond his means while unemployed. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Jeffrey said the civil case would move parallel to the criminal one, but we'd likely see results faster there. In the meantime, life got weird. I was 23, working full-time, and suddenly responsible for a teenager. Hannah needed school supplies, clothes that actually fit, food that wasn't ramen and frozen pizza. My friend and his girlfriend were cool about her staying on their couch, but it wasn't sustainable. I started apartment hunting. Found a 2-bedroom place that was barely affordable but would work. Paid first, last, and security deposit. Watched my savings drop to $3,000. Tried not to panic. We moved in on a Saturday. Hannah's entire life fit in 4 boxes and 2 trash bags. She cried when she saw her room. It was empty, except for an air mattress I'd bought and a lamp from Walmart, but it was hers. We'll get you real furniture, I promised. Just need a few more paychecks. This is more than enough, she said. That first week in the apartment was hard. Hannah had nightmares. I heard her crying through the thin walls at 2 a.m. but didn't know what to do. I'd never been responsible for another person like this. I started researching. Read articles about helping teens cope with trauma and family disruption. Learned I was supposed to maintain routines, provide stability, maybe look into therapy. All things that cost time and money I didn't have much of, but I tried. Made sure she had breakfast before school. Helped with homework I barely understood myself. Let her pick what we watched on Netflix, even though her taste in shows was terrible. She started opening up more. Told me about things I'd never known. How Dad would go into her room when he was angry and throw things around, not at her, but near her, to scare her. How Mom would make her lie to relatives about why they needed to borrow money. How they'd fight about me, about whether kicking me out was the right move, and Dad would always win. He said you were holding him back, Hannah told me one night. That once you were gone, he could finally get his life together without you draining the family resources. Did you believe that? No, I knew you were the only reason we had anything. The preliminary hearing came. I had to testify about my grandfather's will, my relationship with my dad, the discovery of the forged documents. My dad sat there in a cheap suit, looking smaller than I remembered, wouldn't make eye contact. His public defender argued that it was a misunderstanding, that my grandfather had verbally promised my dad the money, and my dad had just formalized what he believed were his father's true wishes. Jeffrey tore that apart, showed the will explicitly naming me, showed the forged signature that didn't match samples of my real signature, showed the timing, how the transfer happened right before my dad kicked me out. The judge bound it over for trial, set a date 4 months out. In the civil case, things moved faster. Jeffrey filed for summary judgment, basically asking the judge to rule without a trial because the facts were so clear. My dad's lawyer opposed it, but weakly. 2 months after I'd filed charges, I got a call from Jeffrey. We won the civil case. Judge ruled in your favor. Your father has to return the full amount plus interest and attorney fees. How's he supposed to do that? He doesn't have it. That's his problem. We can put a lien on the house, garnish wages once he gets a job. There are options. But legally, you've won. It felt hollow. I'd won, but I'd also lost my family. My mom hadn't spoken to me since Hannah left. Extended family still thought I was the villain, and I had a teenager depending on me when I was barely keeping my own head above water. The money started coming back in payments. Small amounts, $200 here, $300 there, garnished from Mom's part-time paycheck since Dad still hadn't found work. It would take years to get it all back this way. But then, something unexpected happened. The house sold. Apparently they couldn't keep up with the mortgage without my contributions, and Dad's legal fees had buried them. They sold for $180,000, paid off what they owed on the mortgage, and had about $40,000 left. Jeffrey moved fast. Got a court order to seize enough to cover what my dad owed me. I got a check for $82,347. The full amount plus interest and legal fees, all at once. I stared at that check for an hour before depositing it. It was more money than I'd ever seen. It was also everything my grandfather had wanted me to have, 2 years late, and only because I'd had to sue my own father for it. Hannah and I went furniture shopping that weekend. Got her a real bed, a desk, a dresser, got myself more than an air mattress, bought groceries without checking prices. It felt surreal. Grandpa would be happy you got it, Hannah said while we were building her desk. He always said you were the smart one, the one who'd do something with your life. I'm a warehouse worker living in a shitty apartment. You're 23 and you're taking care of me. You stood up to Dad when no one else would. That's something. The criminal trial was still coming. My dad took a plea deal a week before it was scheduled to start. Pled guilty to fraud and identity theft. Got 3 years probation, community service, and a permanent record. No jail time. The prosecutor said it was typical for first-time white-collar offenses with family victims. I was pissed, but there was nothing I could do about it. Mom called me after the sentencing. First time I'd heard her voice in 4 months. Are you happy now? She asked. You've destroyed your father's life. He destroyed his own life when he stole from me. That money should have been his. Your grandfather never appreciated what your father did for him. Grandpa left it to me in his will, in writing, legal and clear. You could have handled this privately, within the family. Instead, you humiliated us publicly. He kicked me out to hide what he'd done. He cornered Hannah and smashed her phone. I handled it exactly how it needed to be handled. She was quiet for a moment. I'm moving to Virginia to live with my sister. The house is sold. Your father's staying with a friend. I don't know what will happen to us. What about Hannah? She made her choice. Then she hung up. Hannah took it hard. She'd been holding on to some hope that Mom would come around, would choose her. Now that hope was gone. I don't understand how she can just leave, Hannah said. I'm her daughter. Some people can't admit when they're wrong, so they double down and blame everyone else. Do you think she'll ever talk to us again? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but we're okay without them. 6 months after Christmas dinner, I sat down and looked at where things stood. I had about $65,000 in the bank after buying furniture, covering legal fees, and building an emergency fund. Hannah was doing okay in school, seeing a therapist once a week that insurance mostly covered. I'd gotten a promotion to shift supervisor at the warehouse. We weren't rich. We weren't even comfortable yet. But we were stable, and more importantly, we were free. Hannah turned 17 inches March. I took her to a nice restaurant. Nothing fancy, but nicer than Applebee's. She ordered steak and actually smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in a while. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For not leaving me there. You're my sister. That's what family actually means." A year after Christmas dinner, I got a Facebook message from my mom. Just 3 words. "How is Hannah?" I stared at it for a day before responding. "She's good. Honor roll. Thinking about colleges. She's safe and happy." Mom didn't respond. But 2 weeks later, a card came in the mail addressed to Hannah. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was $100 and a note. "For your birthday. I'm sorry. Love, Mom." Hannah cried when she opened it. Then, she put it in her desk drawer and didn't talk about it. I didn't push her. Some wounds don't heal just because someone says sorry. These days, life is normal. Boring, even. Hannah's a senior now, applying to state schools. I'm still at the warehouse, but I've been putting money into a college fund for her. We have movie nights on Fridays. She complains about her teachers. I complain about my coworkers. We eat too much takeout and argue about whose turn it is to clean the bathroom. It's not the family I grew up with, but it's the family we built, and it's better than anything I had before. Sometimes I think about Christmas dinner, about that moment when my dad told me I was a burden and needed to leave. Part of me will always be hurt by that, but another part is grateful. Because if he hadn't kicked me out, I never would have found out what he'd done. I'd still be living in that house, paying their bills, being their backup plan. Instead, I'm here, free, with a sister who knows someone actually chose her. And maybe that's worth more than $80,000 or a relationship with parents who never really valued me anyway. Last month, Hannah asked if she could invite friends over. I said yes. They came over, ordered pizza, watched movies too loud. I heard them laughing through my bedroom door. One of her friends asked who I was, and Hannah said, "That's my brother. He's basically raised me for the past year and a half." "Cool," the friend said. "He seems nice." "He is," Hannah replied. "He's the best person I know." I stood in the hallway listening and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not in myself, really. In us. In what we'd become despite everything. The inheritance my grandfather left me wasn't just money. It was a chance. A way out. A foundation to build something better. And yeah, I had to fight my own father in court to get it. Had to blow up what was left of my family. Had to learn how to be a guardian to a teenager when I was barely an adult myself. But I'd do it again. Every time. Because some things are worth fighting for. And sometimes, the family you make is better than the family you were born into. Update 2 months later. So, a lot has happened since my last update. Text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Candace, David's girlfriend. We need to talk about Dylan and Sophia. Call me." I deleted it. Another text came through. Dylan this time, from his cell. "You're going to regret this. Just wait." I screenshot it. Saved it to a folder I labeled Evidence. Then blocked his number. Sophia texted next. Long paragraph about how she was sorry and scared, and David's apartment was small, and Candace was mean, and could she please come home? I showed it to Lisa. She read it with red eyes. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think she's learning what consequences feel like," Lisa said. "And I think if we take her back now, we teach her that crying and apologizing is all it takes to undo everything. No, she stays with David. At least for a while." We both blocked Sophia's number. The texts kept coming through Lisa's phone. She turned it off completely. "What did the investigator say about the gambling?" I asked. "Dylan's in deep. The card is maxed. He used David's information to open it, forged his signature on the application. David doesn't even know yet. How much? $3,500 on that card. But there's another one. Different company. Another $2,000. I sat up. How? Used my maiden name, my old address, my social security number from documents in my filing cabinet." Lisa's voice was flat. "The investigator thinks there might be more. He's still tracking. We need to report this." "I know. I mean to the police, Lisa. This isn't just teenage rebellion. This is fraud. Identity theft." "I know," she repeated. "But he's my son. He's also a criminal." She flinched like I'd slapped her. But she didn't argue. The next morning, Lisa called the credit card company's fraud department. Explained that her 17-year-old son had stolen her information and opened accounts. They put freezes on everything. Started investigations. Asked if she wanted to press charges. She looked at me across the kitchen table. "Do I? That's not my decision. You're my husband, this affects you too. He stole from both of us," I said. "But he's your kid. I can't tell you to send him to jail." "But you think I should?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Lisa told the credit card companies she'd decide about charges within the week. Hung up and immediately called David. "Did you know Dylan opened credit cards using my information?" she asked without preamble. I could hear David's voice from across the table. Loud, defensive, making excuses. "Stop," Lisa said. "Just stop. I don't want to hear about how I wasn't watching him closely enough, or how this is because of the divorce. He committed fraud. Multiple counts. The credit card companies are investigating, and I have a week to decide if I want to press charges. Silence on the other end. I need to know if you're going to actually parent him, Lisa continued. Set boundaries, get him help, or if this is going to be the same pattern where you're his friend instead of his father and make excuses for everything he does wrong. You're being dramatic, David said. I could hear him clearly now. Lisa had put the phone on speaker. Kids make mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting homework or staying out past curfew, Lisa said. Fraud is a crime. There's a difference. So you're going to send your own son to jail? I'm going to hold him accountable for his actions. What that looks like depends on his choices moving forward. And yours. She hung up, stared at her phone for a long minute, then looked at me. I need to know you're with me on this, she said. I'm with you. Even if I press charges? Even then. She nodded, picked up her phone again, called the investigator. I need you to find out how bad the damage is, she said. All of it. Every card, every account, every dollar. I need a complete picture. The investigator said something I couldn't hear. Money isn't the issue, Lisa replied. I need to know the truth, whatever it costs. She ended the call and went upstairs. I heard the shower running. She stayed in there for over an hour. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Tom? It was Candace. We need to talk. How did you get my number? Dylan gave it to me. Look, I know you're mad, but you need to understand what you're doing to these kids. They're traumatized. Sophia hasn't stopped crying since last night. Dylan isn't talking to anyone. This is child abuse. I laughed. Actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Child abuse, I repeated. They threw a party in my house, stole my money, committed fraud, cut school, and lied for months. And facing consequences for their actions is abuse? They're children, Candace insisted. They need guidance, not punishment. They've had guidance for 18 months. I tried being understanding, being supportive, being the yes man who gave them everything they wanted. Know what that got me? A trashed house and an empty safe. So no, I don't think consequences are abuse. I think they're long overdue. David is overwhelmed, Candace said. He works full-time. I work full-time. We can't watch them every second. They need to be with their mother. Their mother made her choice. Then you're both terrible parents. I'm not their parent, I said. Remember? They made that very clear. I'm just some guy their mom married, which means I have zero obligation to house them, feed them, or tolerate their disrespect. They wanted to only answer to their biological parents? Great. They got their wish. I hung up. Blocked that number too. Lisa came downstairs an hour later, dressed for work. She'd called in yesterday, but today she had a shift she couldn't miss. Pediatric ICU nurse. Sick kids didn't wait for family drama. You okay? I asked. No, but I will be. She kissed me, quick and firm. Don't answer the door if David shows up. Wasn't planning on it. She left. I called my own job, took a personal day, spent the morning documenting everything, took photos of the damage to the house, made copies of the investigator's report, compiled all the texts and calls from Dylan, Sophia, David, and Candace into a single file. Around noon, David's truck pulled into the driveway. I watched through the window. He got out, looked at the door, saw the new locks, tried his key anyway. When it didn't work, he rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. He rang it again, then knocked, then pounded. Tom, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Open the door. We need to talk about this. I stayed quiet. He couldn't get in. That's all that mattered. After 10 minutes of knocking and yelling, he gave up. Got back in his truck, but he didn't leave. Just sat there in my driveway with the engine running. I called the non-emergency police line. There's a man parked in my driveway refusing to leave, I said. I've asked him to go. He won't. The dispatcher asked for details. I explained about the stepkids, the theft, them moving out, David now harassing us. Is he threatening you? Not directly, but he's refusing to leave my property after being asked. And given that his son stole from me yesterday, I'd rather not have a confrontation. A patrol car arrived 20 minutes later. I watched from the window as the officer talked to David, saw David gesturing at the house, getting animated. The officer said something that made David's shoulders slump. David left. The officer came to the door. I answered. Sir, I explained to Mr. He checked his notepad. David Brenner that he needs to stay off your property unless invited. He's upset about his children being removed from the home. I've documented this call. If he comes back without permission, call us immediately and we can pursue trespassing charges. Thank you. The dispatcher mentioned theft. Have you filed a report? Not yet. Still gathering documentation. Sooner is better than later, the officer said, particularly with juveniles involved. Creates a paper trail if things escalate. He left. I made coffee and sat down to finish my documentation. Around 3, Lisa called. David showed up at the hospital, she said. Security had to remove him. What did he want? To convince me to take the kids back. When I said no, he started yelling about how I abandoned them, how I'm a terrible mother, how he's going to take me back to court for full custody. Let him try. Tom, I'm scared. Her voice cracked. What if the court sides with him? What if they say I'm unfit because I kicked them out? You didn't kick them out. You moved them to their father's house per your custody agreement after they committed crimes in your home. That's not abandonment. That's appropriate parenting. What if they don't see it that way? Then we get a lawyer and show them the evidence. The investigators report, the credit card fraud, the parties, everything. She was quiet for a moment. Okay, you're right. When are you home? 2 hours. I'm leaving now. Drive safe. I spent those 2 hours calling lawyers, family law attorneys in our area. The first 3 couldn't take us on short notice. The fourth, a woman named Patricia Vance, listened to my summary and asked me to come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything, she said. Every document, every text, every photo. I need to see the full picture. How much is this going to cost? My retainer is $5,000. But based on what you're telling me, this is a solid case. The kids committed crimes. You're not denying access, just requiring they live primarily with their father. Lisa's well within her rights. I gave her my credit card information over the phone. She'd have paperwork ready for tomorrow. Lisa came home exhausted. We ordered takeout and ate in silence in front of the TV. Around 8, her phone rang. David again. She answered on speaker. What? Dylan's in the hospital, David said. Lisa stood up so fast her plate crashed to the floor. What happened? He tried to hurt himself, cut his wrists in the bathroom. Candace found him. We're at County General. I'm coming, Lisa said, already grabbing her keys. Lisa, I said carefully. Wait. She looked at me like I'd suggested she abandon her child. Just wait. 1 minute. I turned to the phone. David, how bad is it? Bad enough, he said. They're admitting him for psych eval. So he's stable. For now. Then Lisa doesn't need to rush down there. She's been working all day. She's exhausted. She'll come tomorrow during visiting hours. Her son tried to kill himself and you're telling her not to come? David's voice rose. What kind of man are you? The kind who remembers that Dylan is manipulative and has used suicide threats before when he doesn't get his way. I looked at Lisa. Remember sophomore year? When you told him he couldn't go to that concert? Lisa's face went pale. He texted me saying he wanted to die. I raced home from work. Found him playing video games in his room. Exactly. This could be real. Or it could be another manipulation. Either way, the hospital has him. He's safe. You going down there exhausted and emotional doesn't help anyone. He's my son, Lisa said. I know. And tomorrow during visiting hours, we'll both go. Together. But right now you need to take care of yourself first. She looked torn, phone still pressed to her ear. David still yelling on the other end about how she was a terrible mother who chose a man over her children. I'll call the hospital, Lisa said. Talk to the nurses. Make sure he's actually stable. Then I'll decide. She hung up on David, called County General, asked for the psych ward, identified herself as Dylan's mother, and a nurse at a different hospital. The nurse she spoke to confirmed Dylan was admitted, stitched up, currently sedated and stable. Can I speak to him? He's sleeping. The medication we gave him will keep him out until morning. You can call back then or come during visiting hours tomorrow at 2. Lisa thanked her and hung up, looked at me with eyes that were drowning. What if this is real? She whispered. What if he actually wanted to die and I wasn't there? Then the hospital saved him, I said. And tomorrow we'll figure out what's real and what's not. But Lisa, you can't let this manipulate you into undoing everything. Dylan knows your weak spot. He's pressing it. He's 17 and in a hospital bed because of choices he made, actions he took, consequences he's facing. I pulled her close. I know this is hard, but you can't save him by destroying yourself. Or us. She cried into my shirt for 20 minutes, then pulled away, wiped her eyes, and nodded. You're right. I know you're right. It just feels wrong. Being a parent means making wrong-feeling choices that are actually right, I said. At least that's what my mom used to say. We went to bed early. Lisa took something to help her sleep. I lay awake, listening to her breathe and wondering if I'd just made everything worse. My phone buzzed at 2 in the morning. Text from another unknown number. This is Sophia. Please tell Mom that Dylan's okay. They're keeping him for 3 days. Dad won't let me see him. I'm scared. I screenshot it, added it to the evidence folder. Didn't respond. Another text came through. Please. I know you hate us, but I'm scared. I responded this time. I don't hate you. But your mother needs rest. I'll tell her in the morning. Dylan's safe. The hospital is taking care of him. Try to sleep. I can't sleep. Dad and Candace are fighting. She doesn't want us here. She keeps saying we're ruining everything. That's between them. Not your problem. Everything is my problem. This is all my fault. If we'd been better, none of this would have happened. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to agree. To say yes. If you'd been better, we wouldn't be here. But she was 15. Scared. Watching her brother in a hospital and her family imploding. You made bad choices, I typed. But bad choices don't make you a bad person. You can learn from this. Be better. But that starts with taking responsibility, not blaming others, not making excuses, owning what you did and deciding to change. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I'm sorry, she wrote, for everything. I know you don't believe me, but I am. Show me through actions, not words. No response after that. I set my phone down and finally fell asleep around 4. Lisa woke me at 7. She'd already showered and dressed, made coffee, looked determined in a way I hadn't seen before. I called the hospital, she said. Dylan's awake, asking for me. We're going at 2 during visiting hours, together. But first, we're meeting with Patricia. The lawyer's office was downtown, small but professional. Patricia was maybe 50, gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened to our story without interrupting, looked through every document we brought, took notes on a yellow legal pad. This is clear-cut, she said when we finished. The children committed crimes. You documented everything. You didn't deny access, just required they live with their father. Unless David can prove abuse or neglect, which he can't. Lisa's within her rights. If he takes you to court, we show the judge this. She tapped the investigator's report. No judge will fault a parent for protecting themselves from theft and fraud. What about Dylan being in the hospital? Lisa asked. Did you cause his mental health crisis? No. Did you deny him medical care? No. Then it's not relevant. Teenagers in difficult situations sometimes harm themselves. That's tragic. But it doesn't mean the parents caused it by setting boundaries. In fact, I'd argue the lack of boundaries contributed to his issues. Patricia leaned forward. Here's what I recommend. You visit Dylan today. You're supportive but firm. You don't apologize for your choices. You don't promise to take him back. You tell him you love him and that he's getting help. Then you leave. You document the visit. You continue with the fraud investigation. And if David files for custody modification, we're ready. How much is this going to cost? Lisa asked. If David doesn't file anything, just the retainer. If he does, could be anywhere from 10 to 30,000 depending on how much he fights. Lisa looked at me. I nodded. Do it, she said. Whatever it takes. We left the lawyer's office and grabbed lunch. Neither of us ate much. At 1:30 we headed to County General. The psych ward was on the 4th floor. Locked doors, intercom system. We had to show ID and explain our relationship to Dylan before they'd let us in. A nurse escorted us to a common room. Dylan sat at a table by himself, wrists bandaged, wearing hospital scrubs. He looked small, vulnerable. Nothing like the smug teenager who'd laughed at me 3 days ago. He saw Lisa and burst into tears. She hesitated, just for a second, then went to him and pulled him into a hug. He sobbed into her shoulder like a little kid. I stayed by the door, watching, waiting to see if this was real or another performance. I'm sorry, Dylan kept saying. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't mean it. I was just so scared. Scared of what? Lisa asked, pulling back to look at him. Of everything. Of Dad's place. Of Candace. Of losing you. Of being a screw-up. His voice cracked. I know I messed up. I know I stole from Tom. I know I'm terrible. I just wanted everything to stop. So you hurt yourself. I thought if I was gone, it would be easier for everyone. Lisa's face hardened. Just slightly. Don't you ever say that again. You being gone wouldn't make anything easier. It would destroy me. Do you understand? Destroy me. Dylan nodded miserably. But, Lisa continued, I'm not going to pretend that what you did to get here was okay. You stole. You lied. You committed fraud. You threw parties in our house and destroyed our things. You disrespected Tom over and over. And when we finally said enough, you tried to manipulate the situation by hurting yourself. It wasn't manipulation, Dylan protested. I really wanted... Stop, Lisa's voice went cold. I'm a nurse, Dylan. I've worked psych. I know the difference between a genuine suicide attempt and a cry for attention. The cuts on your wrists are horizontal, shallow. You hit no major vessels. You did it in a bathroom where you knew Candace would find you quickly. This was a performance. Dylan's face crumpled. No, Mom, I swear. You're getting help, Lisa interrupted. You're going to stay here for 3 days. You're going to talk to the psychiatrist. You're going to be honest about everything. And when you get out, you're going to live with your father and follow his rules. Maybe eventually you can come home, but that depends entirely on you, on real change, not promises, not apologies, actions. I want to come home now, Dylan said. Please, I'll be better, I promise. Your promises mean nothing. Lisa stood up. I love you. I will always love you, but I don't like who you've become, and until you decide to change that, you're staying with your father. She turned and walked toward the door. Dylan called after her, pleading, begging. The nurse stepped in when he tried to follow. Lisa didn't look back. I followed her out. We got to the elevator before she collapsed against the wall, shaking. I held her while she cried. The elevator dinged. We got in, rode down in silence. Did I just abandon my son? She whispered. No. You just refuse to be manipulated by him. He's in a hospital bed because he put himself there. I pressed the button for the lobby. Lisa, you did everything right. You were honest. You were firm. You showed him love doesn't mean accepting abuse. It feels like I failed him. You'd fail him more by teaching him that hurting himself gets him what he wants. We drove home in silence. Lisa stared out the window the whole way. When we got to the house, David's truck was in the driveway again. No, I said. No, he's not doing this. I pulled out my phone, called the police before we even got out of the car, told them David was trespassing again. They said they'd send someone. David got out of his truck when he saw us, walked over like he owned the place. We need to talk about Dylan, he said. There's nothing to talk about, Lisa replied. He's getting help. He'll be released to you in 3 days. He needs to come home, his real home, with his mother.
My husband slapped me when I told him I was pregnant. Evan and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years. We've had 2 years of negative tests and wondering if something was wrong with me. Then last month I missed my period. Then I took 5 tests in one sitting because I couldn't believe the first 4. When those 2 pink lines finally appeared, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried until my sister Carrie talked me down through the phone. She told me I needed to tell everyone and make it special. Don't just blurt it out over dinner. Throw a party, invite everyone who matters. Turn this into a memory we'd tell our kid about someday. So that's exactly what I did. 7 weeks later, my house was packed with everyone I loved. My parents stood by the appetizer table. Carrie kept shooting me excited glances from across the room. Evan's parents had flown in from Arizona, and his younger brother Jeff had shown up early to help me set chairs and arrange the gift table. Evan worked the crowd like he always did, shaking hands and making people laugh, being the charming husband I'd fallen for 6 years ago. I watched him from the kitchen doorway and felt my heart swell. Tonight, I was going to make him the happiest man alive. I grabbed a fork, tapped it against my wine glass, and the room slowly went quiet. 40 faces turned toward me. My mom was already tearing up, and she didn't even know yet. Evan made his way through the crowd and stood beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist. He looked at me with warm, curious eyes, completely clueless as to what I was about to say. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I know some of you traveled really far, and I promise it's worth it." I looked up at Evan and smiled. "We're having a baby. I'm pregnant." The room exploded. My mom screamed. My dad started clapping so hard I thought he'd hurt his hands. Carrie was jumping up and down yelling, "I knew it," even though she actually did know. Everyone was hugging and crying, and the energy in that room felt like pure love. I turned to Evan, expecting him to lift me up or spin me around or do something romantic. Instead, he was frozen. His arm had dropped from my waist. His face had gone completely white. "Evan?" I reached for him. "Baby, aren't you excited? We're finally going to be parents." And that's when it came. The slap to my face that hit so hard I crashed backward into the gift table. The pain was instant and blinding, like someone had taken a hot skillet and pressed it flat against my skin. The music kept playing for 3 more seconds before someone killed it, and then there was nothing. Just silence. Just the ringing in my ear where his hand had landed. I looked up at my husband from the floor and didn't recognize the man standing over me. His face was twisted into something ugly, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You cheating whore!" he yelled. "You really thought you could pass off someone else's baby as mine?" I couldn't speak. My cheek was on fire and my brain couldn't process what was happening. "Evan, what are you talking about?" I finally managed. "I've never cheated on you. I would never do that to you." He laughed and it sounded like something breaking. "Stop lying." He was screaming now, veins bulging in his neck, spit flying from his mouth. "You can't be pregnant with my baby Marina. I had a vasectomy 4 years ago before we even got married. I can't have babies." The words hit me harder than his hand did. A vasectomy. 4 years ago. He'd been letting me cry over negative tests for 2 years, knowing the whole time it was impossible. "So whose is it?" he continued, his voice getting louder. "Who have you been sleeping with behind my back? How long has this been going on?" The room was still dead silent. My mother had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father looked like he wanted to end someone but couldn't make his legs move. And then someone was kneeling beside me, warm hands on my shoulders, helping me sit up, brushing glass away from my dress. I looked and it was Jeff, his face pale with shock as he stared at his brother like he was seeing a monster. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jeff said, his voice shaking with anger. "You just hit your pregnant wife in front of everyone." He helped me to my feet and positioned himself between me and Evan like a shield. Evan was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. 2 years I let you make me feel guilty for not giving you a baby. And this whole time you were spreading your legs for someone else? He turned to the room, arms wide, like he was inviting everyone to see what I really was. Look at her. Look at her standing there pretending to be confused. She knows exactly what she did. She knows exactly whose baby that is. So there I was, face stinging entire family watching accused of cheating by my own husband. And the worst part? Evan had proof. A vasectomy I never knew about. In his mind, this pregnancy was impossible unless I slept with someone else. I demanded a paternity test. It would take a week to come back. 7 days until I could prove I was innocent. But I didn't know that those 7 days would be the worst of my life. Because while I waited for science to save me, everyone I loved was about to turn on me. Everyone left the party without saying goodbye. They just grabbed their coats and filed out one by one, eyes down, mouths shut. My parents were the last to go. My father hugged me so tight it hurt and whispered, "I'll kill him if you want me to." But I shook my head because I still believed this was a misunderstanding. When the door finally closed, I turned around and Evan was already walking toward our bedroom. "Evan," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "Please just listen to me. I don't know how to explain this, but I haven't been with anyone else. You're the only man I've been with in 6 years. There has to be another explanation." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just this cold, empty sound that made me feel sick. "Another explanation? For how you got pregnant by a man who can't make babies?" He took a step toward me. I flinched. I actually flinched away from my own husband, and I watched that register on his face. For half a second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or recognition of what he'd done. But then it was gone, replaced by that hard, angry mask. "I'd love to hear it, Marina. Really. Enlighten me." I had nothing. No explanation. No defense except my own word, which clearly meant nothing to him anymore. "Then let's do a paternity test," I said. "Let's prove it scientifically. Because when that test comes back showing you're the father, you're going to have to live with how you treated me tonight. You're going to have to look me in the eyes knowing you hit me and called me those things and humiliated me in front of everyone I love." Something changed in his expression. Doubt, maybe. Or fear. He was quiet for a long moment, and I let the silence stretch because I needed him to feel the weight of what he'd done. "Fine," he finally said. "First thing tomorrow." We sat in the clinic waiting room like two strangers sharing a bus stop. Evan sat 4 chairs away from me with his arms crossed and his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. Every few minutes he'd glance at me and then look away, like even the sight of me made him sick. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab his face and force him to look at me, really look at me, and see that I was telling the truth. But I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, staring at the wall, trying not to cry in public. The nurse called my name first, and I went alone because Evan refused to be in the same room while they drew my blood. Afterwards, she told me I'd have to wait 7 to 10 business days. I sighed heavily. That meant 7 to 10 days of this hell. I nodded and thanked her and walked back to the waiting room on legs that didn't feel like mine. The texts from his family started on day 2. His mother went first. "I always knew you were a whore. Now my whole family knows it too." His sister followed an hour later. "You disgust me. I hope you lose that baby." His aunt sent a paragraph about how she'd warned Evan not to marry me, how she'd seen the trash in me from day one, how I'd fooled everyone with my nice girl act, but now the mask was off. His cousin sent a photo of me from the party, mid-fall, with the caption, "Cheaters always get what they deserve." I sat on my bed reading message after message until my phone screen blurred from tears. These people had hugged me at holidays. They'd sent me birthday cards. They'd told me I was part of the family. Now they were calling me names I'd never been called in my life, and wishing harm on my unborn child. I turned off my phone because I couldn't take anymore. Carrie came over that afternoon and found me still in bed. She climbed in next to me like we were kids again and held me while I cried. "You need to leave him," she said softly. "He hit you, Marina. In front of witnesses. You could press charges. You could take him for everything." My mother called that night saying the same thing. So did my father. So did everyone in my family who reached out. Leave him, sue him, make him pay. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because the test would prove I was innocent and then everything would go back to normal. It had to. I lay awake that night with my hand on my stomach, trying to feel something. Some connection to the life growing inside me. But all I felt was doubt. What if Evan was right? What if the vasectomy made it impossible? What if somehow, some way, something had happened that I couldn't remember? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't stop it from creeping in. I went through every night of the past 3 months in my head. Every time Evan and I had been together. Every moment I'd been alone. Nothing made sense. I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew it in my bones. But if Evan really couldn't have children, then whose baby was this? On day 4, Jeff knocked on my door holding a bag of takeout. "Figured you weren't eating," he said. His voice was gentle and his eyes were soft with concern. I hadn't showered in 2 days. I was wearing the same sweatpants I'd slept in, and my hair was tangled into a mess on top of my head. I looked like a mess. But Jeff didn't seem to notice or care. He just stood there on my porch waiting patiently for me to let him in. And I did. We sat at the kitchen table and Jeff unpacked containers of lo mein and fried rice and orange chicken. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask me to explain myself or defend myself or prove anything. He just handed me a fork and said, "Eat something, please." So I did. Small bites at first because I had zero appetite. But the food was warm and the company was warmer, and slowly I started to feel almost human again. Jeff talked about stupid things. A movie he'd seen last week. A coworker who kept microwaving fish in the office and stinking up the whole place. His neighbor's dog that barked at 3 in the morning every single night. He filled the silence with easy conversation that didn't require anything from me except to listen. And when I finally started crying, which I knew I would, he didn't panic or pull away. He just moved his chair closer and put his arm around my shoulders and let me fall apart. "I didn't do anything wrong," I said between sobs. "I know you probably think I did, but I swear, Jeff, I have never been with anyone except your brother. I don't know how this happened. I don't understand any of this." He rubbed slow circles on my back and shook his head. "I believe you," he said quietly. "I don't know what's going on, but I know you're not that kind of person. Anyone who spent 5 minutes with you knows that." I cried harder because after 4 days of being treated like a criminal, someone finally saw me. Someone finally believed me without demanding proof. Jeff stayed for 2 more hours. He washed the dishes even though I told him not to. He made sure I had his number saved in my phone in case I needed anything. And when he left, he hugged me at the door and told me to call him anytime, day or night, if everything got too heavy. I watched him drive away and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Someone was actually on my side and not trying to tell me what to do or berating me left and right. I survived the week from hell. Evan's family calling me every name. Carrie begging me to leave him. Evan looking through me like I was already gone. The only person who didn't treat me like a criminal was Jeff. He checked on me every day, brought me food when I couldn't eat, told me Evan was wrong for what he did. But I held on because the test results were finally here. This was my proof, my vindication. Except when I opened that envelope, I didn't find salvation. I found something that made everything 1,000 times worse. 3 more days passed before the envelope arrived. Jeff checked on me a few times and brought food when he could, but mostly I was alone in a house where my husband lived 20 feet away and acted like I didn't exist. Evan had been locked in the guest room since the night of the party. He'd leave for work before I woke up. He'd come home after I'd already gone to bed. The only sign he was still living there was the coffee mug in the sink every morning, and the sound of the guest room door clicking shut every night. We existed in the same house like ghosts who couldn't see each other. Sometimes I'd stand outside the guest room door with my hand raised, ready to knock, ready to try one more time, but I never did. What was the point? He'd made up his mind about me. The only thing that would change it was proof. And proof was coming. When the mail truck finally pulled up on day 7, I was standing at the window like I'd been doing every afternoon. My heart jumped into my throat the second I saw the white envelope in the mailman's hand, clinic logo in the corner, my name printed on the front, my entire future folded up inside a single piece of paper. I ran outside in my bare feet, not caring that the concrete was cold, not caring that I was still in my pajamas. I grabbed the envelope from his hands before he could put it in the box. He gave me a strange look, but I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except what was inside. I held it against my chest and felt my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was it. This was finally it. 7 days of hell were about to end. I was about to be vindicated. I called Jeff first. I don't know why. Maybe because he was the only person who'd believed me. Maybe because I needed someone in my corner when I finally proved the world wrong. He answered on the second ring. The results came, I said, and I could hear the hope in my own voice. They're here, Jeff. I'm holding them right now. He told me he'd be there in 10 minutes and to wait for him before I opened anything. I agreed because I wanted witnesses. I wanted everyone to see the moment I was proven innocent. Then I went to the guest room door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Evan, I called through the door. The results are here. Come out. I want you to see this with your own eyes. I pressed my ear against the wood and heard movement inside. Footsteps. The creak of the bed. Then silence. I knocked a third time. I'm not going away. This affects both of us and you're going to be here when I open it. More silence. Then finally the lock clicked. The door swung open and Evan stood there looking at me with empty eyes. He'd lost weight in the past week. His face was pale and there were dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping either. For half a second I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the slap. I remembered the names he'd called me. I remembered the way he'd turned the whole room against me. The sympathy disappeared. He didn't say a word. He just walked past me toward the kitchen and sat down at the table with his arms crossed, waiting. I followed him and placed the envelope in the center of the table between us. Neither of us touched it. We just stared at it like it might explode. Jeff arrived 5 minutes later. I heard his car pull into the driveway and went to let him in. He looked nervous, which surprised me. His eyes kept darting to the envelope on the table and then back to my face. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded because I was more than okay. I was ready. I was finally going to prove that I hadn't done anything wrong. He followed me into the kitchen and froze when he saw Evan sitting there. The two brothers looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them that I couldn't read. Then Jeff pulled out a chair and sat down, positioning himself closer to me than to Evan. You haven't opened it yet, Jeff said, stating the obvious. I shook my head. I wanted witnesses. I wanted both of you to watch me open it so no one can say I tampered with anything. So no one can claim I switched the results or forged something or whatever other accusation might come next. I looked directly at Evan when I said that last part. He didn't react. Just sat there with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, staring at the envelope like he was trying to set it on fire with his eyes. Jeff reached across the table and put his hand over mine. His palm was warm against my cold fingers. Whatever happens, he said softly, I'm here, okay? No matter what that paper says, I'm not going anywhere. I squeezed his hand and thanked him for being the only person who'd stood by me through this nightmare, for the only person who'd believed me when everyone else had already decided I was guilty. Evan's eyes locked onto our hands and something dark flickered across his face. His jaw tightened even more. His nostrils flared. Seriously? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just ice. I'm sitting right here and you're holding hands with my brother? Should I even bother reading those results or do I already have my answer? I pulled my hand away from Jeff's and stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. The sound was loud in the quiet kitchen. Don't you dare, I said, and my voice came out stronger than I expected. Don't you dare twist this into something it's not. Your brother is the only person who's been kind to me while you've been treating me like garbage. He's been bringing me food because I can't eat. He's been checking on me because you won't even look at me. So don't you stand there and act like I'm doing something wrong by accepting basic human kindness from the only person who's offered it. Evan rolled his eyes. Just open the envelope, Marina. I don't have all day to listen to your excuses. I took a deep breath and picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should, like the weight of my entire marriage was pressed into that single piece of paper. I looked at Evan and felt something surge in my chest. Confidence. Certainty. I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew I hadn't been with anyone else. Whatever was in this envelope was going to prove it. And then he was going to have to look me in the eyes and apologize for everything he'd put me through. I held onto that image as I slid my finger under the seal. The sound of the paper tearing was impossibly loud. I pulled out the single sheet inside and unfolded it slowly, savoring the moment. This was it. This was my vindication. My eyes scanned the words at the top. Medical terminology. Reference numbers. My name. Evan's name. And then the results. I read them once. My brain didn't process what I was seeing. I read them again. The words were the same, but they still didn't make sense. I read them a third time and the paper started shaking in my hands. No. No, 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 no. This wasn't right. This couldn't be right. There had to be a mistake. A typo. A mix-up at the lab. Something. Anything. Because what I was reading was impossible. What does it say? Evan demanded. His voice cut through the fog in my brain. Read it out loud. I want to hear you say it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat had closed up. My lungs had stopped working. The room was tilting sideways, and I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling over. Marina, Jeff said, and his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Far away. Muffled. What does it say? I looked up at my husband. At the man I'd loved for 6 years. At the man I'd built a life with. At the man who was waiting for me to confirm everything he already believed about me. Tears were streaming down my face, and I couldn't stop them. It says you're not the father. The words hung in the air between us. Heavy. Final. Devastating. Evan's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker of surprise. He just sat there with his arms crossed like he'd been expecting this all along. Like he'd known from the beginning that I was exactly what he accused me of being. And there it is, he said slowly. His voice was calm now. Almost peaceful. Like a storm that had finally passed. The proof. You've been cheating on me this whole time and now you can't hide it anymore. He stood up slowly and put both hands on the table, leaning toward me until I could see every line of anger on his face. So who is it? Huh? Who's the lucky guy? Someone from work? Some random guy you met at a bar? An ex-boyfriend you never really got over? He was getting louder with each question. Tell me, Marina. I deserve to know whose baby you're carrying in my house. Whose baby you tried to trick me into raising as my own. I don't know. I sobbed. The words came out broken and desperate. I don't understand. I haven't been with anyone else, Evan. I swear on my life I haven't been with anyone else. There has to be a mistake. The lab made an error. We need to take another test. We need to... He slammed his fist on the table so hard the envelope jumped and my whole body flinched. The test isn't wrong. He was screaming now. Full volume. Veins bulging in his neck just like the night of the party. Science doesn't lie, Marina. DNA doesn't lie. The only liar in this room is you. He pointed his finger in my face and I could see his hand shaking with rage. You've been lying to me for months, maybe years, and now you're standing there crying like you're the victim? Like I'm the bad guy for being angry that my wife got pregnant by another man? I didn't do this, I screamed back at him. Something inside me broke. All the fear and confusion and desperation came pouring out as rage. I don't know how this happened, but I didn't do this. I have never been with anyone except you. Not once in 6 years. I don't understand what's happening, but I know I didn't cheat. You have to believe me, Evan. Please. I grabbed his arm, desperate for him to see me. Really see me. To look past his anger and recognize the woman he'd married. The woman who loved him. The woman who would never betray him. Please believe me. Please. I'm begging you. He shoved me away so hard I stumbled backward. My hip hit the counter and pain shot through my side. Jeff jumped up and caught me before I could fall further, his arms wrapping around me to steady me. Don't touch me, Evan snarled, and his face was twisted into something I didn't recognize. Pure hatred. Pure disgust. Don't ever touch me again. You make me sick. Looking at you right now makes me physically sick. I can't even stand to be in the same room as you. He turned to Jeff, who was still holding on to me, and his eyes narrowed. And you, my own brother, sitting here holding her hand, comforting her, being her shoulder to cry on while my marriage falls apart. He took a step toward Jeff, and for a second I thought he was going to swing. Did you know about this? Did you know she was sleeping around behind my back? Have you two been laughing at me this whole time? Jeff's face went pale. His arms tightened around me almost protectively. I didn't know anything, he said quietly. His voice was steady, but I could feel his heart pounding against my back. I swear to you, Evan. I just came to support her when the results came in. That's all. I had no idea. Evan stared at his brother for a long moment, searching his face for something. Then he laughed. That horrible cold laugh that made my blood run cold. Support her. Right. Well, congratulations. She's all yours now. You can have her. I'm done. He turned and stormed toward the guest room. I heard drawers being yanked open, clothes being thrown, hangers clattering to the floor. Jeff let go of me and I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, frozen, tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking so hard I thought my bones might rattle loose. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so sure, so completely certain that the test would save me, that science would prove what I already knew, prove I was innocent and faithful. Instead, the test had destroyed everything, and it hadn't even given me answers. It just told me Evan wasn't the father. It didn't tell me who was. It didn't explain how any of this was possible. It just left me standing in my kitchen with my whole life in pieces, and no idea how to put them back together. Evan came back 10 minutes later dragging 2 suitcases behind him. He didn't look at me as he walked toward the front door. His face was set in stone. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, like I was already invisible to him. "Evan, wait," I begged, running after him. I grabbed the back of his shirt and he spun around so fast I stumbled backward. "Don't touch me," he said through clenched teeth. "What part of that don't you understand?" I held up my hands in surrender, tears blurring my vision. "Please, we can figure this out. We can take another test. Something is wrong. Something doesn't make sense. I know I didn't cheat, Evan. I know it. There has to be an explanation." He stared at me for a long moment, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or sadness, or the ghost of the man he used to be. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, hard mask. "The only thing that doesn't make sense is how I didn't see what you really were sooner. My mother was right about you. My whole family was right about you. I should have listened to them from the beginning." He picked up his suitcases and opened the front door. "I'm staying with Felix until I figure out what to do about the house. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to contact me at all. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist anymore." The door slammed behind him so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Then his car started. Then he was gone. And I was alone. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor and cried so hard I thought I might shatter into 1,000 pieces. Jeff knelt down beside me and tried to put his arm around me, but I pushed him away. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want kindness. I wanted answers. Because I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew I hadn't been with anyone else. I had never let another man touch me in 6 years of marriage. So how was this possible? How was I carrying a baby that wasn't my husband's? I stared at those results knowing how guilty this looked. Evan was gone. He wouldn't even let me explain. He had already decided I was a cheater and a liar. But I still had no idea how this happened. I didn't know that Carrie was about to ask me a question that would change everything. A question I should have asked myself weeks ago. I called Carrie before the sun came up. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting by the phone all night. "The results came back," I said. My voice was raw from crying. "Evan's not the father." She was at my door within the hour. I let her in and handed her the paper without saying anything. She read it twice, her face getting paler each time. Then she set it down on the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Sit down," she said. "We need to talk through this." I sat across from her at the table. The same table where Evan had slammed his fist. The same spot where Jeff had held my hand. The exact place where my entire life had fallen apart less than 12 hours ago. Carrie pushed the results aside and folded her hands in front of her. "I need you to walk me through everything. Not the party. Before that. When do you think you conceived?" I stared at her. "What does that matter? The test says Evan isn't the father. That's the only thing that matters. Just answer the question, Marina. When do you think it happened?" I tried to focus. My brain felt like it was full of static. "I don't know exactly. Evan and I were together a lot during that window. We had a whole system. Ovulation tracking, temperature charts, scheduled nights. It could have been any of those times." Carrie shook her head. "You're about 11 weeks along. That means conception happened roughly 9 weeks ago. Maybe 10. She leaned forward. "Think harder. Is there any night during that time that stands out? Anything that felt different or strange?" I closed my eyes and tried to go back. All those nights of trying so hard blurred together. The same routine, the same hope, the same disappointment month after month until the one test that finally came back positive. But then something floated up from the back of my mind. A night I hadn't thought about since it happened. A night that was different from all the others. "There was one night," I said slowly. My eyes were still closed, reaching for details I'd never bothered to examine before. "About 9 or 10 weeks ago. I woke up because Evan was shaking me, gently. Then I felt him kissing my neck. I paused, remembering. I asked if he was in the mood and he just hummed, like a yes. And I remember wanting a baby so badly I went along with it." Carrie's voice was steady. "What else do you remember?" I tried to pull more from the fog. It was completely dark. We have blackout curtains because Evan's a light sleeper. I couldn't see anything, not even an outline. I paused. Something was shifting in my chest. Something uncomfortable. He never actually said anything. Not one word the whole time. Usually Evan would whisper to me, tell me he loved me, ask if I was okay. But that night it was just the hum. And when it was over, he just rolled away and went to sleep. Or I thought he did. I was so tired I passed out again right after. Carrie was quiet for a long moment. I opened my eyes and found her staring at me with an expression that made me dizzy. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, gentle, like she was trying not to break something fragile. "Marina, I need you to really think about what I'm about to ask you." I felt my whole body tense. "Okay." She reached across the table and took my hands. Her fingers were cold. That night, the darkness, the silence, the way he didn't speak, just hummed. She squeezed my hands. "Are you absolutely certain it was Evan?" I yanked my hands back like she'd burned me. What kind of question is that? Of course it was Evan. I was in my own bed, in my own house. Who else would it have been? But even as the words came out, something cold started crawling up my spine. Carrie didn't look away. "You said it was pitch black. You said he never spoke. Not one word. Just a hum that could have come from anyone." She paused. "How do you know it was him?" "Because it had to be him," I said. But my voice was shaking. "He was there when I woke up in the morning. Nobody else could have gotten into our house. What you're suggesting is insane, Carrie. Completely insane. Carrie's face was pale, but her voice stayed steady. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking you to consider something. A possibility that would explain why you're pregnant with a baby that isn't Evan's, even though you swear you never cheated. I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward onto the floor. I needed to move. I needed to get away from this conversation. I needed my sister to stop saying things that were making the walls close in around me. No, I said. I was backing away from the table. That's not possible. I would have known. I would have felt that something was wrong. I would have, but would I have? The room was completely dark. Not a single word was spoken. Just that one low hum. His hands didn't touch me the way Evans usually did. Rougher. More urgent. Less careful with me. I had told myself it was because he was half asleep. Exhaustion made people different. Sometimes intimacy didn't have to be gentle to still be love. What if it wasn't love at all? What if it wasn't Evan? Oh God, I whispered. My back hit the kitchen counter and I grabbed it to keep myself upright. Carrie. Oh my God. She was out of her chair instantly, crossing the room to catch me as my legs gave out. Her arms wrapped around me and held me up while my whole body started to shake. Breathe, she said into my hair. Just breathe. We don't know anything for sure yet. This is just a possibility. We need to think about this clearly. But I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't think at all. If Carrie was right, then an intruder had come into my home while I was sleeping. A stranger had climbed into my bed in the dark. My body had been used while I thought it was my husband. And I had gone along with it eagerly, wanting a baby so badly that I never questioned the silence. Never wondered why the darkness felt different. Never stopped to make sure the man touching me was actually my husband. Who? I choked out. The word barely made it past my throat. Who would do something like that? Who has access to our house in the middle of the night? Carrie went very still. Her arms tightened around me. And then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. Who has a key to your house, Marina? The answer hit me like a truck. The only person who had one was Jeff. Jeff had a key. Evan gave him one 2 years ago when we went on vacation and needed someone to water the plants. We never asked for it back. My mind started racing through everything from the past week. His kindness when everyone else turned on me. His certainty that I hadn't cheated. Showing up at my door without being called. Sitting too close on the couch. Touching my knee. Telling me maybe my marriage falling apart was for the best. Being there when I opened the results. Holding my hand while I read the words that destroyed my life. No, I said. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. Horrible pieces. Pieces I didn't want to see. Not Jeff. He wouldn't. He's Evan's brother. He's been helping me. He's been... I trailed off. Helpful. Attentive. Always there. Never surprised by anything that happened. Like he already knew how it would end. Carrie pulled back and looked me in the eyes. We need to find out for sure. Another test. One that compares your baby's DNA to Jeff's. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely stand. And if it's him? If the test comes back positive? What do I do then, Carrie? What do I do if Evan's own brother did this to me? It wasn't Evan that night. The realization hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. Someone came into my bedroom in the dark, got into my bed, and I never knew. I thought I was trying to make a baby with my husband. I was being used by Jeff. Every visit, every kind word, every time he told me Evan didn't deserve me. He knew. He knew the whole time. Now I had to make Evan believe me. He wouldn't answer his phone. He thought I was still the villain, but I knew where he was staying, and I wasn't going to let him hide from the truth anymore. Carrie didn't have an answer. Neither did I. But I knew one thing for certain. Evan needed to hear this. He needed to know what his brother might have done. I grabbed my phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. 5 more times I tried. Each call going nowhere. Each ring making me more desperate. He'd blocked me. Or he was ignoring me. Either way, I wasn't getting through. He's staying with Felix, I told Carrie. I know where that is. I'm going over there. She tried to stop me. Told me I should wait until I had proof. Told me showing up hysterical with accusations against his brother would only make things worse. But I couldn't wait. Every second that passed was another second Evan believed I had betrayed him. Another second Jeff got away with what he did. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car before Carrie could say anything else. The drive to Felix's apartment took 12 minutes. I spent every one of them rehearsing what I would say. How I would make Evan listen. How I would convince him that his own brother had done something unthinkable. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Felix's apartment was on the 3rd floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time and pounded on the door so hard my knuckles ached. No answer. I pounded again. Evan, I yelled through the wood. I know you're in there. Open the door, please. I figured it out. I know what happened. Silence. Then footsteps. Then the door swung open and Evan stood there looking at me like I was a ghost he'd been trying to outrun. His eyes were red. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Go away, Marina. His voice was flat. Dead. I don't want to hear any more lies. I pushed past him into the apartment before he could stop me. Felix was sitting on the couch looking uncomfortable. I ignored him completely. It wasn't me, I said, turning to face Evan. I didn't cheat on you. I never cheated on you. But someone did get me pregnant. Someone who had access to our house. Someone who came into our bedroom in the middle of the night while it was pitch black and I couldn't see anything. Evan's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? I told him everything. The night I woke up to someone shaking me. The kiss on my neck. The hum instead of words. The complete darkness. The way nothing felt quite right. But I was so desperate for a baby that I didn't question it. The way whoever it was never spoke. Not once. Just that single hum when I asked if he was in the mood. Evan's face changed as I talked. The anger was still there, but it was moving away from me and towards something else. Someone else. Who has a key to our house? I asked him. Besides us. Who else can get in? I watched the realization hit him. Watched his eyes widen. Watched his hands curl into fists at his sides. Jeff, he whispered. The name came out like poison. I gave Jeff a key 2 years ago. I nodded. Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. He's been so helpful this whole week, Evan. Showing up without being asked, bringing me food, telling me you didn't deserve me, holding my hand when I opened those results. My voice cracked. He knew. He knew the whole time because he's the one who did it. Evan didn't say anything for a long moment. His chest was heaving. His face had gone from pale to red. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely controlled. Get in the car. We drove to Jeff's apartment in complete silence. Evan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. I didn't know what he was going to do when we got there. Part of me was scared to find out. Jeff's building was a nice complex on the east side of town. We pulled into the parking lot and Evan was out of the car before I even had my seatbelt off. I ran after him as he stormed toward the entrance. He didn't buzz. He didn't call. He just waited until someone came out and caught the door before it closed. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. Evan pounded on the door with his fist. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked. The door swung open. And there was Jeff. He wasn't surprised to see us. That was the first thing I noticed. No shock on his face. No confusion. No panic. He just stood there in the doorway looking calm. Almost peaceful. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Hey, he said. His voice was steady. Casual. Like we'd just stopped by for a visit. Evan grabbed him by the shirt and shoved him backward into the apartment. Tell me the truth, he growled. Tell me what you did to my wife. Jeff didn't fight back. Didn't try to defend himself. He just let Evan push him until his back hit the wall. Then he looked past his brother. Directly at me. His eyes found mine and something in them made my skin crawl. Intensity. Hunger. Possession. Like he was looking at something that belonged to him. Marina, he said softly. My name in his mouth made me want to vomit. I've been waiting so long to finally tell you everything. Jeff stood in that doorway looking at us like he'd been expecting this moment his whole life. No panic. No guilt. Just this calm expression that made my skin crawl. Evan demanded answers. I held my breath waiting for denials, excuses, anything that would let me pretend this was some horrible mistake. But he didn't deny it. He smiled. And what came out of his mouth next proved that this wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken accident. This was planned. This was obsession. This was everything. The corners of Jeff's mouth curled upward in a way that made him look like a completely different person. Not the kind brother who brought me takeout. Not the gentle voice that told me everything would be okay. This smile was slow and deliberate and wrong. The kind of smile someone wears when they've been keeping a secret for years and finally get to say it out loud. You might want to let go of me, Evan, Jeff said. His voice was steady and conversational as if Evan wasn't pinning him against the wall with murder in his eyes. This is going to be a long conversation, and you'll want to sit down for it. Evan's hands twisted tighter into Jeff's shirt. The fabric bunched and strained under his grip. A vein was pulsing visibly in his neck and his breathing had gone ragged and heavy. Start talking. Right now. Tell me what you did. Jeff didn't struggle. Didn't try to push Evan off. He just stood there against the wall looking more relaxed than anyone in his position should be. Then his eyes slid past Evan and landed on me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something about his gaze pinned me in place. He stared at me the way a lion stares down a gazelle. It became clear I was his prey from the moment we met, and he was determined to make me his. Fine, Jeff said softly. His eyes never left mine even though he was answering Evan. You want to know what I did? I'll tell you everything. But first you should know that I'm not sorry. Not even a little bit. What I did was the best decision I ever made. My chest felt like someone was sitting on it. Every breath took effort. I pressed my back harder against the wall because my legs weren't trustworthy anymore. They felt hollow, disconnected from the rest of me. Evan slammed Jeff against the wall hard enough to make a picture frame rattle. Talk. Jeff let out a small laugh. Having your spare key gave me so much power. Power I've been wanting for a long time. I loved that I had access to your house, your life. He tilted his head slightly. Your wife. The word wife came out of his mouth like he was tasting something sweet. I felt my dinner rising in my throat. Evan's whole body had gone rigid. The muscles in his arms were straining against his shirt. His jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. That night,